August 16th, 1819, a crowd of over 60,000 people gathers in a field in Manchester, England. They are unarmed. They are peaceful. Many are dressed in their Sunday best. Some even brought their children. Within minutes, soldiers will charge into that crowd with sabers drawn. Men, women, and children will be cut down. By the end of the day, at least 15 people will be dead. Hundreds more injured. And the government? They will call it necessary. So what happened here? Why did a peaceful protest turn into a massacre? And how did this single day reshape democracy, not just in Britain, but in ways that still echo in America today? Let's rewind.
To understand Peterloo, you have to understand the world these people were living in. Early 19th century Britain was changing, fast. The Industrial Revolution had transformed cities like Manchester into booming centers of industry. But prosperity? That was uneven. Factory owners got rich. Workers? Not so much. Conditions were brutal. Long hours, low wages, dangerous jobs. And then, things got worse. After the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, the economy crashed. Thousands of soldiers returned home looking for jobs that didn't exist. Food prices skyrocketed due to the Corn Laws, which kept grain expensive to protect landowners. So imagine this. You're working 14 hours a day, barely feeding your family, and you have no political voice whatsoever. Because here's the twist most people don't realize. Only about 2% of the population could vote. Let that sink in. And in industrial cities like Manchester, there were no elected representatives at all. Now, what would you do?
By 1819, frustration was boiling over. Reformers began organizing mass meetings demanding change, fair representation, lower food prices, and the right to vote. One of the most famous voices? Henry Hunt. Hunt was a radical reformer, a powerful orator. Some saw him as a hero, others a dangerous agitator. Now here's where it gets interesting. Authorities were terrified. Why? Because just 30 years earlier, the French Revolution had shown exactly what could happen when the masses rose up. And British leaders were determined that would never happen here. So when Hunt announced a massive, peaceful rally in Manchester St. Peter's Field, local officials panicked.
They believed this wasn't just a protest. It was the beginning of a revolution. But here's the twist. The organizers went out of their way to keep things peaceful. They banned weapons. They encouraged attendees to dress neatly. Even the banners carried slogans like "Reform, not Revolution." So the question is, if this was peaceful, why did it end in bloodshed? We're about to find out.
August 16th arrives. The weather is clear. The mood almost festive. Families picnic. Bands play. Women in white dresses march in formation, symbolizing purity and peace. By midday, over 60,000 people have gathered. This isn't a mob. This is a movement. Then, Henry Hunt arrives. The crowd erupts in cheers. He climbs onto a platform to speak. And at that exact moment, the local magistrates make their decision. They issue a warrant for Hunt's arrest. But here's the problem. There are tens of thousands of people between Hunt and the authorities. So how do they get to him? They call in the cavalry. At first, it's the local yeomanry, a volunteer cavalry. Inexperienced, nervous, armed with sabers. They charge into the crowd. Panic spreads instantly.
People are crushed, trampled. Then, things escalate. Regular army cavalry, the 15th Hussars, are ordered in. And this is where it gets truly horrifying. They don't just disperse the crowd. They cut through it. Men slashed, women knocked down, children caught in the chaos. Eyewitnesses describe sabers flashing like lightning. One reporter later wrote, "The field presented one of the most dreadful scenes of confusion."
And remember, these people were unarmed. Within minutes, the field becomes a scene of devastation. At least 15 dead, hundreds injured. But here's the part that changes everything. The authorities didn't apologize. They congratulated themselves.
News of the massacre spreads rapidly. And the reaction? Outrage. Journalists coin a name, a bitter, sarcastic one. Peterloo, a dark reference to the Battle of Waterloo. But instead of a victory over Napoleon, this was a government attacking its own people. Now, what most people don't know is the government's response wasn't reform. It was repression. They passed the 6 Acts, laws designed to silence protest, restrict the press, and prevent large gatherings. So instead of solving the problem, they doubled down. But here's the twist. Peterloo didn't kill the reform movement. It fueled it. Over the next decades, pressure kept building. And eventually, change came. The Reform Act of 1832 expanded voting rights. Not for everyone, but it was a start. And the ideas born in places like St. Peter's Field, they spread across the Atlantic. Because the same questions echoed in the United States. Who gets a voice? Who holds power? And what happens when the government turns against its own people? Sound familiar?
Today, the Peterloo Massacre is less well known than it should be, but its legacy is everywhere. Every protest, every demand for representation, every debate about government power, it all connects back to moments like this. So the next time you see a crowd demanding change, ask yourself, what happens when those in power feel threatened? And more importantly, what happens when ordinary people refuse to stay silent? Because history shows us change rarely comes quietly.
If you found this story powerful, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves history. And let me know in the comments, what other forgotten events should we uncover next? Because sometimes the stories we don't hear are the ones we most need to understand.